insecticide?
Greetings Transformers fans, welcome to another third-party Transformers review. This one is going to be for X-Transbots Savant, but you and I both know this is actually Skids, one of the least well-known original 85 Transformers Autobots. A lot of the Transformers that came out in the first 2 years, usually referred to as the Arcbots, had a lot of personality, but for some reason this guy didn't get much character development in the original Sunbow cartoon. Just taking a look at the box here, you get some interesting quotes. "I am the place in which something has occurred." So I don't understand the reference of that, but it's on two sides of the box. And we also get a little bit of information here. His duty or his expertise is that he is a theoretician. This is a brand new release and it is currently available on Big Bad Toy Store. On the back we have a picture of the actual alt mode, and we get a tech specs looking bio on the back, very similar to the original G1. So we will open the box up here, and we get styrofoam. Not great for the environment, but high in nostalgia value. There's just something about a Transformer encased in styrofoam, and it's a nice, it's like a box of styrofoam. Comes in vehicle mode, and right off the bat, the first thing that I noticed, this is my first time actually opening him, so I guess this is a unboxing reaction video. But the first thing that I notice opening him up is this really beautiful paint job. It's got a very subtle metallic blue fleck in it. So I was just expecting regular blue plastic like on the original G1 toy, but that's awesome. I love when these Transformers get a full paint job, so that's cool. And the windows are tinted. They almost look black, but light does pass through them. And just to show you how dark that tint is, here's a flashlight passing through. Doesn't seem to be going through the back part. Oh, that's because there's stuff in the way there. But it is a really dark tint. And before we go into the vehicle mode in depth, what you also get is this booklet here with instructions and a trading card. And here's a look at the trading card. Really nice material. This is a hard plastic. This is like a credit card. Really nice. Usually this is just a little piece of cardboard, but look at that. Nice and glossy. Get the bio in there too. Nicely done. And who needs these instructions? This is actually a really beautiful book. This isn't just a cheap little fold out. This is actually like a little miniature book. Give you a step-by-step process on how to transform old Skids / Savant. And a couple of accessories are inside the styrofoam box. Let's pull these out. Now this is cool. This reminds me of the little scooter that came with the G.I. Joe Killer Whale. So this fits into the back of Skids. Take a look at that in a minute. And he also comes with a couple of weapons. Cool that he comes with multiple weapons, because the original Skids also came with multiple weapons. So this little scooter has a kickstand that flips up like this, helps it stand. And in order to open it up, most thumbnails aren't going to be narrow enough to get in there. You're going to need some kind of a tool to sort of get in there and lift that up like that. And when you lift that up, there are some handlebars inside. Being careful. This is very small, thin material. This part can also lift up like this, and I guess you can have this be one giant seat, or you can have this fold back in. See how this thing swivels right here? So you can sort of decide what you want to do with it, how you want it to look. I guess if you want to try to put your Masterpiece Spike in it, we'll grab a Masterpiece Spike that came with Optimus Prime. Unfortunately, there isn't enough leg room to get his legs in there, and this little guy doesn't really have the range in his legs to straddle it. So this is the best. I mean, it's not meant for him. You can sort of try to have him sit up front. I don't know. It's not really meant for him. It's more for show. If you can find another tiny figure in this scale, you might be able to use this, but it's for the most part, I think it's just a cool little extra add-on. And what this reminds me the most of is this guy right here, the little scooter from the G.I. Joe Killer Whale hovercraft that good old Cutter would always ride around on. So it's not intended to be motorcycle sized. It's supposed to be basically the size of a bicycle, just judging from how big this little thing is. I mean, this thing isn't even close to being the size of a Ram cycle. And just to see if Cutter fits, this thing does go back like that for added seating room. Not bad, actually. Not bad. It'll get you from A to B. And the reason it's included is because in Japan, what they used to do a lot, maybe they still do, is they would drive the cars to a certain area, but because the areas are so heavily populated, it's actually a really cool idea. It's kind of like having a bike in your minivan. So you can open up the trunk. One of the tricks is to just stick your finger in there and pop that out. Open this up, and he's actually got trunk space in the back here. So you can just pop his scooter in the back there, however you want, and it fits in there nice. Doesn't rattle around. Close it back up, and it's like having a bike in the back of your minivan. And just for those who are curious, no, this one does not fit, unless you want to do that thing that people do and having stuff hanging out of their trunk. You'd just have to add like a little scarf or something to warn people. And here's a comparison of the Masterpiece scale Skids with the original G1 Skids. I always thought this was a minivan, kind of a super deformed version of a minivan like the Minibots are when I was little, because we didn't have this particular vehicle in my part of Canada in North America. It's a Honda City Turbo, so just looking at it, it looked like a minivan to me. More compact than Ironhide or Ratchet, but that's what I thought it was, and it was interesting to find out when I finally saw a life-size version of it. It's not the size of a minivan, it's a car. It's kind of like a precursor to a hatchback. So you see the difference in color here. The original, this is actually an Encore, but about the same color as the original Skids. Nice deep blue, and this one has the deep blue as well. It's just it has that beautiful metallic fleck in it, and this Encore has the see-through blue, whereas this one has just the dark windows. And for a third comparison, here he is with the Transformer that I have been using as a stand-in for my Masterpiece collection. It is the Alternators version of Skids with some custom stickers on it to make them look more G1 accurate. So here you can see the big difference in size between alternators, which were 1/24th scale, and this is in the Masterpiece, current Masterpiece scale. So quite a bit smaller, and then the tiniest of all is the original. Now the thing I like the most about the alternators, and I miss the most about them, was the detailed interiors on them, which Masterpiece Transformers have done away with mostly. The awesome thing about this one, and a few other third-party companies have done it too, Mastermind Creations Inferno comes to mind, actual spots, that's part of the transformation coming loose there, attach that back onto the body, but we have working doors on this guy with seats, actual working seats in here. You can see this seat can go forward and back, and also on the other side, because this is not a North American vehicle, the steering wheel is over on the other side. So that's a tiny detail that I absolutely love. I love it when you can actually open up a vehicle mode, alt mode, and be able to put drivers in. So I don't believe there is enough room in here to wedge your spike in because of the steering wheel. It's if you do get it, it's going to be a really tight squeeze. And I'm sure some people might be able to get him in there, maybe remove his legs if you want him to be able to sit in there, but on the driver's side it's probably not going to happen. There's a little bit more room on the other side though, so if you want to let Skids drive and just have Spike be a passenger, my fingers are a little too big for this sort of delicate job, but you can get him in there. And close it up. The windows are so dark though, you can barely see him in there anyway. You'd have to flash the flashlight in there, and what's the point in that? So it's kind of ironic that this is one of the few Masterpiece Transformers that actually has working doors, and you can't see inside because of the dark tints. So go figure. Okay, that's vehicle mode. Not necessarily one of the prettiest Autobot vehicles from the first 2 years. The Lamborghini Countach, the Lancia Stratos, even the Datsuns, definitely more sporty, cooler looking cars than this one, but in terms of an in-city car, since Transformers were supposed to be all about disguise more than meets the eye, I think it's cool to have a guy like this who just is blending in, because they're supposed to blend in. Nothing fancy, nothing special. And a really nice paint job on it too, as well as other little details carried over from the alternators days, like an actual muffler in the back and mirrors, side view mirrors on the front. Nice painting on the hubcaps, silver paint. These roll fantastic too. That's always nice when these cars actually roll without effort instead of something grinding on there. The undercarriage, I don't care. It never bothers me what it looks like underneath, because I don't display my Transformers vehicles like this or like this. I display them like this, so that stuff is hidden underneath there. And also another nice little added touch is clear plastic for the headlights there, and a little teeny tiny, not an Autobot symbol, but space for one, if you can find one that tiny. And if you want to give them some firepower in vehicle mode, give them kind of that Target Master look to them, like a lot of official and third-party Masterpiece Transformers. You can add his gun onto the roof there so that he can attack while he's driving around. Alright, that's vehicle mode. Now let's transform him. And done.
Robotic insecticide?
Oh, yeah. I guess that's from the X-Transbots Cosmos. Anyway, here's Savant Skids in robot mode, and not as frustrating as a lot of third-party transformers are in the transformation. Sometimes in order to get the vehicle and the robot mode looking as toon accurate or realistic looking for the vehicle mode, sometimes they have to do some really crazy stuff like 18 steps in one leg to get it to all unbuckle and unfold. This particular transformation doesn't actually take all that long and isn't all that frustrating. I do like when there are certain pegs like this that fit into spots like that, just to make it a little bit more secure. There's a really nice one underneath in here too, where you see that there's a big peg there and a big spot where it plugs into. Makes him feel secure. And this guy, what I'm really surprised about is how hefty he feels, especially bottom heavy. I think these are metal, and usually metal feet is not a big deal for me. Like when I think of metal feet on Hot Rod or Rodimus Prime, it made no difference whatsoever for their stability. But this guy, just the way this is all dispersed, and there's other weight in the legs, it really makes him feel like he is not going to fall over. He feels much sturdier. Look at this. Even like this, he does not want to fall over. Looks like he's had too much energon or something, bad batch. But that is some really, maybe not so much going, even that, get some limbo action on him. That's really impressive. Because that's another thing that can be frustrating about a figure. You want to be able to pose it, put it in all sorts of different poses, and sometimes you're limited by what the figure can do in order to not fall over. This guy has a lot of range. And we'll add some weapons for old Skids too. And this particular gun has a handle, and it also has a peg. So it's kind of like when the weapons have a peg that goes into the side of their hand, and he actually does have hands with those gaps in them if you want to try giving him some other weapons. But this particular one, you can just slide it into his fist, and then it looks like you can plug it as long as you have your fist perfectly aligned. If you just slide it, fit it into there, it's nice and secure. So that's always nice when, I mean, this guy's hands are super tight anyway. He doesn't need that extra little bit, but there's no way that gun is coming out. Rodimus Prime, Masterpiece Rodimus Prime comes to mind with having hands that are completely useless for holding a weapon, and he needs that little slot to peg the gun in, but the problem is the gun just doesn't peg in there very well. And then this gun, you can, I guess, let him hold it. There's not much to hold on to, but it's fairly secure. Or you can stick it on his forearm. And so both guns securely fit into his forearms. In terms of articulation, the feet have this great joint down here that allow for tilted feet, push it in, push it back, and these stabilizers right here have posability in them too. The knees, really nice tight ratchet joints, and it's a double knee joint, so it bends there and it bends there. So he gets this huge range. And this guy feels so sturdy. I bet I could balance him in this position right here. Oh, can the hand come out? How is this for showing off the posability and the stability of X-Transbots Savant? this is something to be extremely proud of. He is not a floppy mess. Everything is nice and tight. Really, really well designed. I think that's super impressive. That's something for X-Transbots to be proud of. And looking at more articulation, this in the hip, fantastic. You can do the splits. You can do the Jean-Claude Van Damme if you have two Optimus Primes, or Optimus and Ultra Magnus. You can do the Jean-Claude splits, 1 foot on each truck. And he's also got an ab crunch, I guess you would call it. This doesn't fit in, it doesn't peg in to hold it, I guess because they don't want to impede articulation there. They don't want you to have to yank it out every time he looks down. But this to me feels a little bit like Masterpiece Hot Rod, who has a tendency to do this too much. So that's a little bit on the loose side there. But he has a swivel as well. Arms are great. Lots of shoulder articulation. Up, down, left, right. And elbow. If we remove the weapon, which cuts down on the posability a little bit, the elbow can bend here. I like the design here of this little thing that fits over in the transformation in order to cover up the wheel a little bit. So that's kind of cool. He also has a swivel at the arm, and the fists, not articulated individual fingers, just one bunch of fingers. Thumb doesn't move. Very similar to the Carbots, like Prowl and Blue Streak. And the fist spins around too, and you can make a fist. Pop that in there. Head is great. Looks up. You can sort of look down, left, right, a little bit of a tilt. Those inquisical, whimsical Autobot tilts, but he's got tons of range to look up. So if you've got an Omega Supreme, he can, or a Constructor or another one of those giant robots, he can be posed looking up and being amazed by that. And then he's got the doors in behind, which can swing all the way out or slightly back or all the way back, depending on your preference. The one thing is these bottom parts of the doors, they separate as part of the transformation, and they don't really seem to want to stay together. Feels like maybe they should be able to peg in, but they don't. Doesn't really bother me though. But I think that this is an incredible rendition of Skids. Really, really amazing job by X-Transbots. I'm not really brand loyal when it comes to third-party Transformers. I'm not a fan's toy fanboy, or you know, nothing but X-Transbots. It all depends on what each individual one looks like. Did a great chat with Scott Orr on the Patreon a while back about which one do you go with in things like all of the different Springers that are available in Masterpiece scale. And it's what speaks to me, what resonates with me. And even though this guy didn't have much time on the cartoon, this to me seems like Skids. Now I know there aren't that many choices at the moment, but I think they did a fantastic job. Car mode looks fantastic. I'm really, really impressed with the robot mode. This is the type of Transformer I just love to futz with. Just play around, do different poses. So much range available here. It's really impressive, and I just love how sturdy he is too. Fantastic. So speaking of different choices, let's do some comparisons with some of the other versions of Skids. And here he is with his G1 self. The colors don't seem to match up as closely when they're both in robot mode. I think mainly because when this guy is in robot mode, it's the exact same colors being used that were in vehicle mode, whereas this guy, he has these baby blue parts that become unhidden So the dark blue parts, you don't really see them when he transforms into robot mode other than the head and the chest. And it's the baby blue parts that really jump out at you, or these kind of regular blue. It's not quite light blue, but because it's not painted, it doesn't seem as dark and glossy as the other blue. So this guy does seem a little bit lighter, more tune accurate, I'd say, which is a little weird to have a tune accurate Skids considering he had less than a minute of total screen time, or about that, and maybe 2 lines during the entire Sunbow run. But that's the 2 of them together. And for another comparison, this is the Skids that had been on my masterpiece wall and behind, and that is the Alternators Skids. So just a little bit bigger, but much bulkier looking based on the Scion. So this is much better. This looks more like one of the 85 Carbots to me, whereas this guy is like Ironhide looking big and bulky, which I never really pictured Skids being. Much darker too. And another nice little touch is that the original chromed double barrel blaster of Skids has been homaged with the new version on Savant. Not chromed, but still pretty cool that he gets to retain the double barrel weapon that plugs into his forearm. And for a height comparison, here we see that Skids, at least this particular version of him, is not actually one of the tallest Carbots now. He's lost a few inches in being upgraded to his masterpiece size. The G1 version was originally a little bit taller than Wheeljack and Prowl, and this time, well, he's the same size as them, pretty much. Maybe just a tiny, it's tough. It's tough to say. From some angles he seems taller than Prowl, and from other angles Prowl seems taller than him, so it's tough to say, but I think he's the perfect size. He fits in perfectly, and I'm going to take a look right now and see what he looks like on my Masterpiece Autobot shelf. So this is the transformer I had been using on my Masterpiece shelf as seen on the 80s Toy Museum virtual tours, the Alternator Skids. And since we are very close to New Year's, the old expression, out with the old and in with the new. Savant can take his place now with his little scooter right there alongside all of his fellow 85 bots. Waited a long time to finally have a Masterpiece scaled proper Skids, either official or unofficial, and I think X-Transbots has done a fantastic job. Very cool looking Autobot, even if he doesn't have a lot of personality due to not much screen time on the cartoon. I mean, pretty much all he's good for is telling you what this is.
Robotic insecticide?
Yep. Or if you get him around some football fans, then you might be able to get him to say,
"We'll start him at the 10-yard line."
But other than that, if you want to give your Skids a personality, I think you're pretty much going to have to go with his antics in the original Marvel comic, because there wasn't much going on the cartoon for this guy. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to leave a comment below, and to join the tribe, hit subscribe. Nerdmaste!